Welcome back to Launch Window Research. I was just fortunate enough to have a conversation with Dylan Taylor. He's a commercial astronaut, philanthropist, and CEO of Voyager Space. Voyager Space hopes to solve the problems that the space industry has with scaling by strategically combining smaller space companies so that together they can undertake bigger projects than any one of them could do alone. They're currently working on a commercial space station which will help NASA replace the ISS. Additionally, Voyager has the long-term goal of becoming a publicly traded company, so you should all keep this one on your radar. Enjoy the interview.
Great to be on with you, Nathan. Thanks for making this happen.
Dylan, I guess the first thing I have to ask, I think I'm sort of obligated to ask this, is since you're a commercial astronaut and the 606th human to go to space, what was it like to experience the overview effect firsthand?
It's life-changing. It's, in many respects, indescribable. I think it's cliche, but when you see the Earth from space, it just totally transforms the way you think about the world. And I knew that kind of intellectually going into it, but there's a kind of a visceral, notion when you're up there that you just can't, you can't remove from your psyche once it penetrates you. I don't know how else to describe it, but yeah.
I mean, it's one of the most profound experiences any human can have, so we don't blame you for... Sorry for starting with such a hard question.
No, it's a great question. I love talking about it. I've been asked about it 100 times. But, and the other thing is I do think floating in zero G, which I had done before on zero G flights, I think that makes a material difference to the experience as well. So yeah, it was amazing. Highly recommend it. Everyone should do it.
I hope to do it sometime in the future. But you are the CEO of Voyager Space. You have an extensive business experience, but Voyager is relatively new. I think it was founded in 2019. So what inspired you to create this new company, and what value are you aiming to provide to the space industry?
Right. Well, the idea behind it was that this new space phenomenon, really exemplified by SpaceX, but many, many other companies, is real. I mean, the tech's real, the entrepreneurial innovation is real. The disruption is real. However, the industry has really struggled, I think, with scaling and really assembling capability that can address some of these larger infrastructure needs that we have. So the idea was, can you create an operating platform that's really harnessing all this entrepreneurial, innovative spirit within new space, but really from a capability first standpoint, and ultimately assemble a company that's capable of delivering on these really ambitious missions. That's really the idea. And so far it's been according to plan. We're about 2 years in, a little over 2 years in, and recently we won the Starlab. We call ours Starlab, but the International Space Station replacement contract from NASA. So that's obviously a big milestone for us. And so that was the impetus, and I would say the other premise is that the best people in this industry don't really want to be a badged employee for a huge company. They want to have the ability to have some co-ownership, the ability to make decisions that are meaningful in the business and things like that. So that was the idea.
Well, I think your approach is absolutely brilliant. I mean, there are hundreds of space startups out there right now, and we see acquisition after acquisition. So basing a company around that strategy, I think is going to be incredibly successful. I think you guys are about 7 acquisitions in right now. What do you look for in a company that you plan to acquire?
Yeah, well, first, the capability matters, right? So we're building to a kind of a master roadmap on capabilities that we want and need. But that's not enough. We obviously want companies that are healthy. Typically, we're not really acquiring startups. They're post-revenue, post-EBITDA, typically cash flow positive companies. And then, of course, the leadership team and the people is critical. So if it's a capability we need, it's a team we like, and they're have gotten traction in the market and demonstrated the ability to run a successful business, then they would be a good candidate for us.
And I know that acquisitions aren't all that you do. I was looking at your website earlier, and I saw that you had this sort of intellectual property exchange.
Yeah.
Um, and basically, it looked to me, but tell me if I'm wrong, like an online marketplace for space technologies, which I think is just about the coolest thing ever. So, how exactly did that come to be? If you can tell us anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was an idea around this idea that there are a lot of companies that form, have some great tech, and then disband pretty quickly, like little, think of them as little soap bubbles, if you will, in the industry. And I just think it's unfortunate because a lot of those companies will develop tech and no one really ever knows what was developed because it's sort of flying under the radar screen. And so the idea was, how do you create a marketplace where those ideas can be monetized or shared throughout the industry, almost like an industry service in a sense, but then also creating a marketplace around IP so people aren't having to reinvent the wheel every time. So that was the original notion. So one part industry service, certainly would have advantages to us as well because we would sort of get first look at things that are traded on the exchange. And we have alone, I think, 40 patents either issued or pending within our ecosystem. But that's the idea behind it.
That's incredible. And speaking of sort of bringing these ideas together to sort of conduct larger scale projects within the industry, what else can you tell us about Starlab and how it compares to the other bids for an ISS replacement?
Yeah, I mean, it's an exciting design. It's an inflatable design as currently contemplated. It's a single launch solution, which is unique because I think the other proposals are, multi-launch, up to 12, 14, 16 launches in order to assemble the station. So I think it's elegant. It's expandable. It's about a third the size of the International Space Station as constructed, that you can actually add 2 additional modules that would triple the capacity. So I think it's an elegant solution. It's a free flyer, so we can put it in whatever orbit we like. It doesn't have to be in the ISS orbit. And we haven't determined what that orbit is, but it gives us a lot of flexibility. Our partner is Lockheed Martin. That's who's going to do the manufacturing. And that's pretty much the short story.
Great. You guys are launching like 2028, 9, like end of this decade, you think?
2027 is what we have said. And I think we have a reasonable chance of hitting that. But yeah, certainly by the end of the decade, but hopefully by 2027.
I guess my next question is, speaking of the future, you guys intend to eventually become a publicly traded company, and I know a whole lot of the people who watch this channel are retail investors interested in investing in the space industry. So roughly when can we expect you to go public? Obviously, we're not going to hold you to any statements you make on this interview.
Well, I don't want to dodge your question, but what I would say is, we're a growing company. Our investment bank is JP Morgan. So we're always actively considering what our options are. And, a public offering is one of the options that you would naturally consider, being a company at our stage. So it's in the conversation. We'll see what the future holds. But right now, really what we're focused on is growing the business. We might do a couple more acquisitions. Who knows? Stay tuned on that. But with Starlab, that's obviously a huge project. We have other infrastructure projects as well, but that's going to keep us pretty busy in the near term.
Yeah, of course. No, I can imagine running a public space company is pretty difficult. But partially, that's what I thought was so elegant about your solution, especially for these smaller companies who could never go public. Eventually, if they come into the Voyager space fold, they could get the benefit of funding on the public level without themselves having to deal with all that mess. Mm-hmm. So, no pressure, but when you do, we'll be very excited to invest and see what you guys are capable of doing. I have a few broader questions. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing the space industry over the next decade or so?
I think it's probably consistency of what the users want and need, right? So in civil space, which we love NASA and all the space agencies around the world, they're our clients and we have strong affection for them. But oftentimes the priorities will change, right? One administration wants to go to the moon, the next administration wants to go to Mars. So I think just consistency around policy helps the space station. Right now it's contemplated to be deorbited in 2030. We had an air leak earlier this year on the earlier in 2021 on the Russian module. That was unexpected. When we had the space debris scare from the Russian satellite that was blown up, in theory, that could have hit the ISS and they had to shelter in place. So those are the kinds of things that you can't predict. And so I think it's really important we have consistent policy that makes sure that we have infrastructure in space that addresses these needs. So that's one issue. Second issue, which I think is related to what I just said, is space debris and making sure, right now it's classic tragedy of the commons where the incremental risk for each player is low. If you put up hardware, the likelihood it's hit by debris is low. But if everyone feels that way, then by definition, the risk is high, right, over time. So it's sort of a rent-free market right now where we're all contributing to sort of the future doom, if you will. And you can pollute an orbit. It's actually pretty easy to do that because if you have a catastrophic collision, all that debris will cascade. It'll create more debris. So we need to take it very seriously. So I think that's a really important point. And then, I'm a big believer in ESG goals for the aerospace industry. We have a huge diversity issue in my mind in the industry, and we need to address that. So that's another long-term challenge that we need to solve.
Yeah, absolutely. Just going through the things you just mentioned, I think consistency, I think we're going to do well on that front, especially as space becomes more private, and, fewer decisions are being made by politicians who only have 4-year terms. Space debris is a whole lot harder, because again, like you said, there's sort of prisoner dilemma. The best thing for everyone is if everyone agrees to do it, but nobody individually wants to do it. And diversity, that's something I personally think about a lot. I'm half black, so I sometimes, I don't know, it's very, very difficult to put into words, but struggle with my own identity within the space industry. But it also represents an opportunity.
It does. And I mean, my philosophy on this, I've said it many times before, is space is such a difficult problem or opportunity that we need every smart person on planet Earth, right? And right now we're accessing about 30% of humanity, if that, to solve these problems. I think it's ridiculous. It's asinine. It makes no sense whatsoever. We need every smart person on planet Earth to help us solve this problem or these problems. So on its face, diversity is required in order for us to be successful.
I think this is a perfect opportunity to ask about the nonprofit you founded. You're no longer a part of it, but you founded it. I think it's Space for Humanity.
Right.
What was the motivation behind that, and what are they doing to improve, public awareness of the space industry?
Yeah. So I am still on the board, so I'm technically still involved in that respect. But the idea behind it was that space is a tool for transformation, that everyone who's been up there has been impacted, myself included, and that fundamentally, if we got more people up there, especially the right kind of people who can affect change when they get back, that would make the world a better place. So that was one idea. The other idea is that we need to democratize access to space and make sure that the next 1,000 people who go are not all, decamillionaires and 100 millionaires and billionaires and all that. That's the idea. So send people of diverse backgrounds and democratize access to space, but also leverage this tool for transformation to make the world a better place. And I think, to me, the answer when people say, well, space is about billionaires and it's about this and it's about that, and we have all these problems here on Earth, my answer is yes, we do have all these problems on Earth. And this is a way to address them. And this is a way to get out of the fishbowl and understand that we need a new perspective. So to me, it's an and conversation instead of an or conversation. It's Earth and space, and they're mutually reinforcing. Plus we need hope and inspiration in the world. I think that there's a huge deficit of that, especially among young people. And so space is one of those things that's super aspirational. It's exciting. And I think a lot of people are interested in it for that reason. I think that's important as well.
I couldn't agree more. I've, only been really fully dedicated to the space industry for like a few years, and I can already tell one of the hardest things is explaining the importance to somebody who doesn't actively track the space industry, because it definitely isn't an and or. I think for every dollar we invest in space, we get $7 back in the economy. But most people just aren't aware of that, and it's through very convoluted ways, so it's hard to explain. And you've been doing this, 10, 20 times as long as I have, so I can't possibly imagine how good of a grasp you have on that whole struggle.
Well, I think your grasp is pretty good. I mean, to me, it's really about, why are these problems intractable? Why can't we solve these problems, right? That's where I started. So climate change, income inequality, pick your intractable problem. Why? I mean, humans are smart. Why haven't we solved these issues? And my answer is because we lack perspective. And we're too parochial, we're too narrow-minded in the way we address issues. And so if you believe that, then you have to ask the next question, which is how do you change your perspective? And there's only a few ways to do that, as far as I can tell. And I think space is one of them.
Absolutely. I have sort of one more question, or maybe two more. One of them is, what would you say to any young people hoping to, make an impact in the space industry, or sort of pick up the torch from, where your generation left off? Because that's just about my only aspiration in life. So,
yeah, it's a thoughtful question. I would say a couple things. One is you don't have to be a STEM student to make an impact in space. Space is mature enough now that really anyone from society can make an impact in space, whether you're an artist or, I don't know, personal trainer, whatever your superpower is, you can get involved in space. So I would encourage people to do that because I hear sometimes, well, I can't be an astronaut because I don't have a PhD in physics. That's not, in my view, the right way to think about it. That there's an entire ecosystem that you can get involved in. So that's one thing. Second, find a mentor. That's the kind of standard advice I have for a lot of young people. Find someone who you respect and who respects you. And I think it's a way to accelerate your development along your career, along your aspirations into an industry. So I think mentorship is really important. And dream big. I mean, that's the other thing. It's funny. People after my space flight are like, what's next? And I'm like, I don't know. I never thought I would go to space. So now I kind of regret not dreaming bigger, and I've got to kind of reload with what's next for me. So, the sky's not the limit. Dream big and aim high, because you're not going to hit a target you're not aiming at. So aim high.
Sorry, I was supposed to say something, but I was just sort of, I guess my last question actually ties into dreaming big. I want to know how you would dream big. Let's say tomorrow you woke up and Voyager Space had $100 billion in the bank. What do you think you would do? I know this is probably something you don't, naturally expect to happen, but if it did happen, what do you think you guys would do?
I would build habitat at L5, which is
L5.
a Lagrangian point. Yeah, I'd build like an O'Neill cylinder at L5. That's what I would do.
It's incredible. Well, that's all the questions I had. So thank you so much for this quick interview.
Yeah, my pleasure, Nathan. Great to be with you. Thanks for having me.